This is Support is Sexy, episode 363, with Esther Weinberg, CEO of Mindlight Group. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I interview inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and their lessons to help you take your business and your life to the next level and create something sexy. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so happy to have you here. It just would not be the same without you. And if you are in the stage, coming into the end of the year and going into the new year, a lot of us go through this reinvention. I always go through it in the fall. A lot of us go through it at the new year. If you are looking to recreate or reinvent your brand story and you want to create a brand story that truly aligns with your vision, I want you to sign up for my free course at createyourbrandstory.com. Now, today, I am super excited to have our guest who talks about branding and also the importance of us being an advocate for ourselves as women. Today's guest is Esther Weinberg. She is the CEO of Mindlight Group, a company that she started in 2000. So she's been at it for 17 years. And what I love, in addition to her talking about us becoming our best advocate for ourselves, she also speaks about the importance of creating dignity zones for ourselves. And you'll find out more about what that is in this episode. But I think with all that we're going through as a society at this time, with Me Too, all of the sexual harassment cases and allegations and things that are coming to light in so many different industries, now is the time for women. It has always been a time, but truly now is a time for us to create dignity zones for ourselves. So make sure you listen out to hear Esther's take on that. What else we also talk about is recognizing when it's time for you to make a pivot, creating space to figure out what your next move will be, examining your triggers to understand your behavior, Esther's top tips for being a happy, dignified leader, and how where you are in the cycle of your business reflects where you are in your level of personal development. Ooh, that one really resonated with me. All right, so now without further ado, Esther Weinberg. So Esther, thank you so much for being here with us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to talk to you.
I am so excited that you're having me on and get a great opportunity to talk to other women and women entrepreneurs. That I think is even more exciting.
Yes, excellent. So first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
Oh, it's so funny because I have such an affinity for entrepreneurs, but I have to tell you, I didn't set out to be one at all. I think I fell in love with it as I became one. I was an accidental entrepreneur, and I started my company in 2000, so quite a ways ago. I started it. I basically fell into my career. Yet when I track back, I can tell you that it very clearly is always. It looks very smart in the rearview mirror, but in the front view mirror, it wasn't quite as elegant as that. I would say that I fell in love with entrepreneurship once I really started to ground my company in this whole notion of helping employees and companies, specifically their executives, to implement and find dignity and power in the workplace. That's when I really fell in love with entrepreneurship, as a way to be an advocate to it and as a way to give tools and strategies and techniques and how to create cultures like that. Then I'll say that I really fell in love with the whole notion of being an entrepreneur and entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you first started out in your journey, as you mentioned, or maybe you didn't mention, I know this from reading your information, that you were a career woman before starting your business, right? For many years.
Well, yeah, I was. It's so funny because someone will say to me, "Oh, when did you stop being an executive?" I was like, "Okay, wait a second. First of all, you're an executive always if you run a company. So
right.
You don't stop being.
You are the executive.
Yeah, you change the type of executive you are. But I started off my career in media, in marketing and publicity in the originally not in entertainment, then became very quickly in entertainment. That's when I started in the entertainment business, which was now quite a ways, goes over 20 years ago. So I started on the marketing publicity side of it. I was working for an agency in New York. I'm from New York.
Mm-hmm.
You can't tell it with my accent. I'm from New York.
Yeah, I'm in New York. I can tell.
Okay, so you know what we sound like.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So born and raised in New York, and I worked originally for marketing and publicity firms because I was really enamored always by this journalistic lens. You know, how do we look at storytelling, shaping stories, informing stories as a method of getting awareness for something? You know, there's always, how do you get awareness? Has to do with storytelling. There's always what we're doing now for storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always fascinated by that lens. How do you get a story out? How do you help brands create images for themselves in different ways in the media? And so originally I worked for an agency, and we were doing marketing and publicity for cable TV networks. We did it also for an entrepreneurial film, an independent film. We did it for a museum in New York, and then but our real bailiwick was doing it for A&E Networks, and launched the History Channel, and we started getting up grassroots cable networks off the ground. We represented a lot of huge brands. I dealt with a lot of talent also. That really grew. That was really my first foray into that field. And then I left to go into financial marketing, advertising, and publicity, which lasted like 8 months because I realized that I really loved the entertainment business. I went back to entertainment through working at Fox. I actually worked at Fox when Fox launched FX Networks. FX was back then, which you'd be shocked by, if anyone remembers, X number of years ago when FX first launched, it was on the brand of TV Made Fresh Daily. So we had all the production was out of a 6,500 square foot apartment in New York City on 26th and 5th across from Madison Square Park.
Really?
So, you never know it.
So what was it? So it was, you said fresh daily content. Was it mostly news back then?
It was 7 hours of live programming.
Okay.
It was interspersed through the day with lots of different shows that you're familiar with. Like originally, I think it was like Dynasty, but I think we had but then later we had NYPD Blue and X-Files, and so there was literally, and it was in the age when none of this existed before. Where now, when you look at TV and television, where television has grown to, you look at different sets and you say, oh, there's sofa environments and very living room-esque environments. Back then, that didn't really exist. So they really pioneered that concept. So you had a living room, you had a den, you had a bathroom, you had a rec room, you had a ballroom. It was one of the most unbelievable jobs. So I worked there for several years, and then I got recruited by the head of Disney's cable division to come and work for her out in California. So basically, I left New York, which I think when you're a New Yorker, you're always a New Yorker in your heart. Mm-hmm. But I left New York and moved out to Los Angeles and began working for Disney, and eventually I was head of their cable division group, now called Disney ABC Cable Networks Group. I was the head of communications for the whole cable networks group. So that was my, internally in corporate America. That was really my training ground. That was the best master's degree that I could ever gotten in the world.
Right. Getting that. And sometimes that's the great thing to be in a company, learn while you're in there. It's almost like, well, it is really part of the best training, even if you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, being a part of a corporation and seeing how it all works.
Well, I tell you that I think that if I had to really construct my career again, I would absolutely have had a career in marketing and publicity to be an entrepreneur. Because I do think that it is something that is so necessary, and learning how to publicize your work, how to publicize other people's work, how to market what you're doing. I mean, look, as entrepreneurs, we know that we're not running a charity, and our business is to get business, right?
Right.
Yet at the same time, how do you do so in a way that's authentic, that's real, that really resonates with an audience? That it's not about, I know for myself, I'm in business that's servicing other people. there's a very specific mandate that I have and a reason for being in business. And I do think that knowing how to talk about that and how to communicate, because communication, I think, is one of the hardest things in the world to master. And so being able to know how to do that and being trained and developed in that, I think, was one of the greatest career choices, little did I know, that I ever could have made to be an accidental entrepreneur. So there you have it.
So going back a little bit, I wanted to ask you, I know you grew up in New York like me, but what part of the New York did you grow up in? Was it in the city or?
I grew up in Brooklyn.
You grew up? Yes, you're a Brooklyn girl. I love it.
It's like we have solidarity. We're like, oh, Brooklyn.
I know. I love it. That's amazing. Now, how would you describe yourself as a young person? What was a young Esther like growing up in Brooklyn?
I would say I was a mixture of things. So I was creative. I loved to write. I loved to help people. I loved to be of service. I was really fascinated by how the world worked. So I loved playing sports, and yet at the same time, I loved figuring things out. I loved looking at the world and figuring out how pieces fit together. At the same time, though, I was really introverted. So I had to push myself because I loved art and everything around arts. So, for example, I was in the plays and schools. I sang. Now, I don't have a great. I'm not Barbra Streisand, but or Beyonce. I don't have a great voice like that. But I sang. I acted in school. It was funny because my mom said something once. She said, "You're this kind of like shy and withdrawn kid, and you're constantly writing and always had this fascination in exploring." She goes, and then you'd get on stage, and I don't know who that child was. Not a child that I saw at home every day. So it was something about this level of creative self-expression and different places of it. Like I said, when we were talking about earlier, that when you look back on it, you could see the threads. But when I was going through it, I'm like, oh, I'm this painfully shy kid. I was trying to find my voice, which was funny because the paradox of trying to find your voice, but then getting on stage and performing and singing, which takes a lot of guts, or just being in a play and just being in front of everyone, that in itself was, I don't know if I never thought about it as a kid. It's just the paradox. But I was the kid also who was kind of righteous about things, that I always thought that there should be dignity around us and dignity, how people should treat each other with human dignity. And I think in my bat mitzvah speech, I think I stood up and gave some kind of like rousing advocacy speech of how people should treat each other. So
I love it. And in that way, you are like Beyonce as far as your other personality coming out when you're on stage. Beyonce and a lot of other introverted performers say they become alive or become a different person when they're on the stage, which sounds like something that was very much a part of you, as you said. And as you mentioned, looking back, you kind of piece it together. But when you're going through it, who knows what it's all about? We're all figuring it out.
Yeah, exactly. No, I had no idea. I had no idea what I was doing.
Now, as you grew up and got older, did you think that, because we mentioned some of your work in corporate America, did you think that you would go into marketing or those kind of things? Were you drawn to that? Or did you think you were going to do creative work?
Well, it was funny because my father was he was in the garment industry and then he was in financial industry and real estate. I had thought at the time that I was going to go into finance. Of course, though, after you take a few classes and you realize that you're not exactly going to be an accountant.
That's what happened to me too in college. I was like, I don't like this.
Exactly. And you just go, well, what am I going to do now? Because you got to declare something. Of course, you got to declare a major or something. And I remember once I just said to myself, which was a real pivot moment for me, was I just thought, it dawned on me, what if I just took some things that I liked, that interested me? Where would that lead me? And so I found this class that was a media class. I went to it. It was taught by, I think it was the editor of New York Magazine at the time, because I went to New York University. When I sat in that class, I was mesmerized. He was talking about journalism, and he was talking about even publicity and how publicists relate with journalists and how stories unfold. And I was in. I mean, I was like, you had me at hello.
What was it about the class that really made you love it?
I think it was this this whole investigative work because I love to, there's something about that digging around and figuring out how people tick, what people are made of, the unfolding of human behavior that really captured me. And how do I bring that to life? So, and how does that come to life in terms of a story that you have to tell? I didn't really all piece it together then. He said this thing about publicists. I didn't even know that there were these people who pitched stories to the news media, and that resulted in stories in the news media. I had no idea about any of that. So when I heard about it, I was like, who are these people? So what I did was I got an internship working for a small publicity agency, and they were doing publicity for products. I think at the time, furniture, things like that. And so I started working, and I remember that, I mean, it was so old school back then. I mean, it was the kind of thing where you got these long these long wide, I wish I could even tell you how long they are. You can see my hands, I'm doing this wide thing. Wide sheets of paper that you'd get, and they were in stacks. And they would say, we're having these events, and you've got to make sure that all these people are coming. You know, it's grunt work, right, when you first start.
Right.
And it's like, you got to call all these people. And I thought, ooh, this is amazing. You know,
it wasn't just shooting out an email, right?
No, email didn't exist back then. I mean, you're talking about 20-something years ago. So we didn't operate that way. But I was really mesmerized by, I mean, I thought that when they came to me and they said, oh, we have this furniture brand, and we have to get out to the news media that we're launching a new product. Can you go ahead and write the story? I thought, to me, that was like someone gave me the keys to the candy store. First of all, I didn't know where to begin, but then you figure it out. And I remember I wrote it, and I was so excited, like a little kid, you know, and I brought it to my boss, and I was like, what do you think? And she critiqued it, and it was terrific. It was one of these moments where you realize that you could make a contribution in a bigger way, and that your voice is valued. That was really important for me, really important.
Mm-hmm. As someone who loved to share her voice.
That's right. Or not.
Exactly. So now this love of communications and media, bringing us back up to your time at Disney as the director of, was it director of communications?
Well, initially I was hired as the director of publicity for Disney Channel, because at the time, there wasn't, so today Disney has, you know, they've got multiple cable units, and they've got multiple businesses in that side of the world. When I was hired by Disney, it was like they had Disney Channel, and that was it. And so they said, hey, we want to launch a suite of networks that will happen over the next few years. Will you come on board and help promote Disney Channel? And so we really were taking Disney Channel. The strategy was to take it from a pay network, like an HBO. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, it's so funny when I say it today, because I'm thinking like Netflix and Hulu and all these different services we have. This seems like so ancient times. But at the time, it was, can you come on board and help promote Disney Channel and really shift the mindset of people, because we're moving it from a pay network to like HBO to a basic network that we want everybody and their mother to get. And how do we position this? What do we want this new brand to be about? How do we entice kids and families to trust us in a more deeper way? How do we tell people what we're about in a new way? How do we basically also be advocates for what kids need, what families need? How do we communicate to them that we're responsibly doing this, that there's data, that there's science behind it, that there's doctors behind what we're doing? So it was a very complex job at the time. And so that's where I started. And then I grew to finally, when they were expanding it, they said, hey, now that we're launching another network, and we're launching another network, so we want to combine it into one holistic company. Will you be the head of publicity for that? And so I said, yes, of course. And so that's where it started. So that's where I grew up in that company to be.
Right. Now, you were there for how long?
I was at Disney for 3 years.
3 years, okay. And Disney was the company where you were when you were inspired to start Mindlight Group, right? Your company.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, what was it during that time that you observed that inspired you to start your own company?
Well, I would say that I didn't actually have any intentions of starting my own business. Mm-hmm. I didn't. I did not. I don't think I had any thought about it. But I think what happened was when I started working at Disney, that I've seen often what happens with clients. So here was a pivot moment. There were a couple of them, but here's one of them. I was sitting in a conference room I was part of the senior executive team, and we're talking about the state of the company, where it's going. And there was a management consultant in the room also. So we're talking, and someone says, which was unbeknownst to me and several people in the room, that we have an attrition problem, that people have left the companies. But, okay, so what are we talking about? Are we talking about 1%, 3%? And the CFO says it's a third. The head of sales and I almost fell off our chairs. We thought, what do you mean it's a third? He said, it's a third of our workforce. But don't worry about it. We're Disney. It's not a problem. Thought, what do you mean? Of course it's a problem. What are we doing? I think we were both, and the head of sales and I we're like, wait a minute, what? There was sort of like this dueling questions going back and forth of, what does that mean? How did we not know? What contributed to this? Right. What's happening? How do we diagnose it? How do we save people? And the comments we got back was, we're Disney. This is a blip on the screen. We're a big company, and we'll be around for a long time. No fuss, no muss.
Was it like almost an everybody's replaceable kind of thing?
It wasn't quite that. I think it was more that we're going through a technology revolution and people will go to shiny object. But you know what? We've been around for a long time. We'll continue to be around for a long time, and we'll continue to be able to attract good people. I thought it was nuts. I just didn't understand it. I was confused by it. I was saddened by it. And the head of sales and I, you could see that he was just befuddled by the whole notion of it. I was too. So that really started me to say, what do I want to go? What's happening here for me? There's something that was attractive and not, because I've seen this a lot with clients of mine where sometimes they get in a job for a certain reason. Then they start being in the job and the job shifts, because that's the nature of things. Then the reason why you started and where the company is going, you may not be in alignment. And that's what was happening for me. So I just kept working, thinking that and then a mentor of mine who was in New York said to me, I'm leaving. I'm starting my own company. I think you should leave too. I think you've got the talent. I think you have the wherewithal to do something else. I don't know what that is. You have to figure that out for yourself. But I'm giving you the advice. I think you should go. And I really thought about it. The more I thought about it, I thought he's right. But I didn't know what I was going to do. I knew at the time that I was in a job that I was becoming disenfranchised with, and I didn't know where to go with it. So eventually, after the course of several months, I found replacements for me, and I went and I resigned. And eventually, we parted company. What was so funny was that you go, okay, you resigned. Okay, Esther, that's great. So what'd you go to do? I said, I'm going to start a publicity company. Now, mind you, while I have huge respect for the discipline of publicity and marketing, a lot of my clients are marketers. It was not what I was meant to do on this planet, to start a publicity agency. And after about a week, I realized, looking to get clients, I realized, oh my goodness, I don't want to do this. What happened? What did I do?
Right. Now, within a week, I was going to say, because sometimes we have to go through those periods of doing it and then figuring out this isn't it. But what happened, do you remember, within a week that really sort of showed you all the signs you needed to know? I'm going to have to pivot from this quickly.
I can tell you exactly. I was sitting in this guy's office. He was an executive at a production company, a big production company here. And he was talking. Now, this has not happened to me since. One time in my life this happened. He's talking, and it was a Seinfeld. It was literally like a Seinfeld episode in my head. He's talking, and in my head, as he's talking, in my head, all I kept thinking was, shut up. I don't want to hear this. I'm not interested. And I'm sitting there, and it's this moment of having this big dichotomy of like, wait a second, what's going on? And there was, of course, you're scheduled to meet for a period of time. And I'm thinking, how do I elegantly excuse myself? Because this is not the place for me to be. So I left, and I thought, my goodness, this is really not my destiny. So what am I going to do? And I was real lost. So I decided to go to travel for 5 weeks. I went to Thailand, Vietnam, and Malaysia for 5 weeks. And there I really started to find that it's time now to do something that really is honestly more of who you are and what you want in your life. That's what it's time for. So that's not an elegant process. It's not necessarily so graceful, but at the same time, it's exactly what I needed to do.
Yeah, and I think the two things that you did, one is, well, in the Seinfeld moment, that's hilarious, but I totally get it. But in that moment, recognizing this isn't it and not being afraid to say, okay, this isn't it, I'm going to try something else, because I've talked to many women, they talk about sometimes we go down this path and we stick with it just because, well, this is what I said I was going to do, or this is what I think I'm meant to do, as opposed to how do you feel in that moment when you're doing it? Maybe that's not it. And then also that you created space for yourself to figure that out. So whether for the women listening, it means traveling around the world or whatever that space looks like, giving yourself time, if you are in that, if you have that ability, I should say, to do so, to figure it out.
Yes. Well, what I would say now is that there was something that felt that how do I create more dignity for myself, for me? Whereas before, I'm plodding along because of something that seemed interesting, seemed attractive. But how do I really now create a place that's dignified for me? And what that meant for me is how do I actually honor the moment that I'm in? How do I create a safe space where I can trust and respect myself to do what I need to do in order to create a career for myself that capitalizes on everything that I've learned, that doesn't negate it, while ushers me into a new start, into a new chapter. That was one of the most challenging things possible to do and the most liberating thing to do. And I find with women, it's something that for you is not always an easy thing to do for yourself. It's just not.
Mm-hmm. Now, how did you do it? Did you do it, of course, with the travel, but did you do it on your own, or did you have a coach or anything during that time? Any kind of process you can share that sort of helps you get through those moments?
What I did was, it was a process. So what I did first was when I came back from travel, because, travel is nice and great, and you could tell people to go and travel and, very eat, pray, love, but you still have to come home.
Right.
So you still have to come home and deal with life. So what I did was a couple of things. One was that I really dove into what were the things presently and when I was a child that gave me great joy. Then I started to knit together what were some breadcrumbs, some pieces of that puzzle. Then I found coaching. At the time, there was barely anybody was doing any kind of coaching. And I found there was like 3 schools that were accrediting coaches, and I found this woman. And I hired her, and within a month, she said, "I think you have a real gift at being an executive coach. That's one of the gifts." And I said, "No, I don't want to pigeonhole myself." And she said, "No, I think it's something you should explore." And so I did. I signed up for one of the most rigorous programs I could, and I started to go to school. Then at the same time, I started getting clients, and so. At the time, too, because I couldn't completely have a leadership development business, I had to do publicity work on the side because, you do have to, sometimes you can't just cut the cord with everything. Mm-hmm. And also it just doesn't make sense. And so that was a gift in itself, because the clients that I had for publicity also organically transitioned into some clients in terms of creating more leadership development, so helping them create more dignity and power in their workplaces through the work that we were doing with publicity. And that in itself was incredible. So I think that if I had to boil it down, I would say you have to tune into what you're passionate about currently and dialing into something that was really primal for yourself when you were young. If you can do that, because I met with someone asked me the other day to mentor them, and we were at a lunch, and she said, "I really want to start something new. I want to get out of where I'm working." And I said to her, "You could do that, and you can absolutely run and go someplace else. But at the end of the day, you're going to find yourself exactly where you are. You're just going to call the situation something else. You're going to be working for not Joe. You're going to be working for Samantha or Bob or Sarah or someone else. Mm-hmm. It's going to be the same. The dynamic doesn't change because you haven't learned your lesson yet. So how do you actually be able to say, here's what I need. Then how do I get someone who's a trusted resource? So for myself, I did hire a coach. I actually think that's a great idea. So, well, it's part of what I do. So I think it's a fabulous idea. So you hire someone else who has it, because someone having an outside perspective is very important. We get in our own way when we think we know what to do. Our knowing, the knowing is what creates the danger. Our sense of being explorers in it is what creates liberation for yourself.
Oh, that is good, Esther. Got to write that down. That's a good quote. I'm holding on to that one. Something that I heard recently, two women I interviewed recently said this also, and it's a phrase I hadn't heard. It's hard to read the label from inside the jar.
Yes.
So getting someone from the outside, I thought, oh, yes, that's what I've been doing. Reading the label, trying to read the label from inside the jar. And so many of us, because we're so caught up in it, especially, we don't think sometimes, get someone that I trust on the outside who can at least tell me their perspective, even if I decide, oh, no, that's not it. But having that outside perspective from a trusted coach or mentor or person can be the pivot that you need.
That's right. Because people don't, I find this often with my work is that in the work that I do, that lots of times we explore perception, because perception, there's one thing about how I lead in the environment that I'm in, but it's secondly, like I was working with this guy who's an attorney, and he was saying, I don't know if I want to really dive into an assessment of really how others perceive me. And I said, well, you perceiving you is only one degree of it, but we have to get both, because first of all, we are all askew of how we see ourselves. And then, of course, how others see us is really important. So getting both sides of those stories really helps to inform partly where we need to move.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now tell us, what does your business look like today? What did it evolve to become once you got through those periods of the not knowing and the exploration?
Well, it's a funny thing because and you probably could hear it in everything that I'm talking about as a through thread, but what I got from it is not to bring us to modern day, is if we look at what's happening in entertainment at the workplace today. I mean, look at Matt Lauer was just fired, Kevin Spacey, the Me Too, Garrison Keillor, Harvey Weinstein, Ben Affleck, Roy Price, Charlie Rose.
Russell Simmons just stepped down today from his companies.
Oh, wow. See, this is what we're not talking about. Is we have to start talking about creating dignity for yourself and others and companies today. If I look back on everything that I've done in my career, I'd say, there's traces of it. There's breadcrumbs of it. But we have to do what I call creating a dignity zone. That's when, like, leaders that I know that do it well, they know they do their best work when they're in environments where they feel safe, respected, and free. They do their best work to lean from the notion that their humanity is at play, and so is everybody else's. Now, I'm not saying that I am not a sexual harassment expert. I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that. But I think that we need to change the conversation today and start talking about what's happening at work to ensure that workplaces are safe, that people can do their best work. Because we spend more time at work than anywhere else.
That's right.
So if we cannot create the places where people can feel respected, they can share their ideas, they can be vulnerable, to know that, hey, even if it doesn't work out, I'll be mentored and coached out of it with respect. That's where we have to evolve. And that's where my business has evolved, because I've seen it time and time and time. I could tell you story after story after story ad nauseum. I mean, I had a client who hired me. I mean, it happened to be a woman, not to go into the stereotype, but she was being mean at work. Nasty, nasty, nasty. When we really got into it, she was in such a high stress situation. She didn't know how to create dignity for herself. She didn't know. The first thing we did was working on her stress levels and looking at it from a medical perspective, as well as some of it was physiological. Hormones, endocrine systems. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but there could be something physiological involved in this. So She went to doctors. She checked herself out. She was managing what was triggering her in her environments. Was her identity being triggered, or her relationships being triggered, or how people saw her was different than how she saw herself? And so,
and the triggers are so important, examining what those are to learn more about yourself.
Completely, because people don't know. You get set off, and then we react from the triggers.
Mm-hmm. And then some people say, this is just how I am. Well, no, there's a reason for everything.
Right. And that's why that's not dignified.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment we tolerate that kind of behavior from ourselves and others, then we're sunk. Then the workplace can't thrive. Then everything you want to create for you and other people, it's gone. It's gone.
So what would you say are 3 tips maybe for, especially having your experience for such a span of time now, since 2000, right? For the past 17 years, that is. What would you say would be your 3 tips then for being a happy as much as possible, dignified leader within a company, or even for yourself, a leader in your own life?
Well,
sorry to interrupt, especially for women.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here we go. So I could probably come up with 20, but I'll give you 3.
Okay.
So I'll give you 3. So number 1 is what we've been talking about. You have to set a dignity zone for you first. Create environments where you are dedicated and relentlessly saying, without any apology, that I'm going to create for myself a place where I feel respected, safe, and free to do my best work. And I'm going to advocate that for others. So I'm going to do it for me, and I'm going to do it for others. The second thing I would say is that this is a mindset game. Work, living, breathing, everything we do in our relationships with our business, with our families, is about our mindset. So like we were talking about before, in an instant, I can see, let's just take feedback as an example. I was just with a client before, and they just got data on employee engagement. And the scores were lower from last year. Not drastically, but lower. And so initially you could look at it and go, man, this is the worst. What the heck are we doing? We got to revamp everything. But on the same side, there was so much rich data that it was a gift. It was like, okay, you know what? Thank you for the truth. Now I know where we stand. This is my scorecard now. Okay, it doesn't look so great. But I have feedback from 250 people, written feedback, not just scoring, of suggestions and thoughts of what we need to do. So it's a mindset game. So you absolutely need to constantly adjust and fine-tune your mindset, because our mindset is that it's terrible, it stinks, and I stink. Especially women. I stink. I can't get ahead. I shouldn't say that. That's a problem. So we need to be able to work on our mindset. And it is it's an easy thing for me to say. It's one of the most difficult things to implement. So the first thing is to catch ourselves. Catch ourselves when we're reacting. Catch ourselves when we're saying something that steps over the dignity zone that we've declared for ourselves. That's what helps us stay in our game, in the game. The third last thing I will say, and I recently did a talk on this for a women's group, is women need to get more visibility and recognition for themselves and the work they do. There's not enough passion and conviction to do that. Absolutely not.
Now, when you say for themselves, do you mean women of each other, or in what way do you mean get more for themselves?
So I'll give you a very clear example. I have a client of mine, and she wants to get promoted. It's a normal thing. We all do good work. We want to get promoted. We all want to get recognized for the work that we've done. So I said to her, we were talking, and we talked about her going out and building more relationships in the company, really going out, really fostering and building really strong relationships in her company. So she says to me, oh, yeah, I can do that. No problem. I can go ahead and do that. She's very determined. No problem. I can go and I can do that. Okay, that sounds great. So I said to her, when you go to those lunches and those conversations, what are you saying to people? And she said, oh, I'm getting to know them. We talked about me getting to know people as people, because that's what I want to do. I'm not doing enough of that. And I really want to change the image that I have of myself as being a harsh person And I know that one thing I want to do is get to know people as people. I said, okay, that's wonderful. But at the same time, what are you sharing with people about it purposefully, about who you are and what work environment, what are you doing in your work? What things are you working on that you're succeeding in? What things are you working on that you're excited by? What things are you working on that you're advancing? And she said, well, I'm uncomfortable about that. That's going to be like I'm promoting myself. And I got dinged on that when we did an assessment of me. I said, so here's the distinction. I'm not saying this language works for everybody. You have to figure it out for yourself. But for example, let's say you go to lunch with somebody. You say, Elayne, and you'll say to me, how are you doing? And typically people go, oh my God, I'm so busy, which is the worst words you could possibly say on the planet to anybody because it doesn't tell anybody anything.
Right.
Oh, I'm so busy. So instead of saying you're so busy, say, Elayne, I have to tell you, I really, for the last 2 weeks, I have been wrestling with this project that my boss put before me. It was one of these, he really wanted my input on this project that's groundbreaking for our company. Never done anything like this before. I'll tell you, I struggled. I started to build coalitions inside of the company. I was getting nowhere. Finally, in the shower, I had this crazy idea. We implemented this idea, and I have to tell you that in the short time, the company has already saved $100,000. Mm-hmm. So I said to her, if you did that, let's say you go ahead and do that, would that sound like you're bragging? And she said, no, it wouldn't. I said, that's right. That's what I'm talking about. We don't do that.
I love that. That's powerful. It tells people, well, it answers the question, how are you or what are you up to, but also what you're accomplishing in a smart way.
Yeah, I don't think that we don't give ourselves enough credit as women to be able to go ahead, and the data shows it too. Now, I have to say I'm not a women's expert in data, and I'm sure you've had other people on the show who's much more experts than me about data analytics about like from Catalyst. But there is formative data that says that women do their best. Like for there was one data that showed that men will apply for jobs that they're not fully qualified for.
Exactly. They don't worry about the knowledge gap. I always say that.
That's right.
We want to be overqualified.
And we have to be, you're right. You're right. I'm so glad you said it that way. Not just qualified, like pole jumping off the fence or something of our, and then we have to apologize for how we've actually achieved everything that we've achieved, which is, there was a study, I think the New York Times had this, there was a study of about, I think it was 2/3 of, I think it was like 3,000 professional and college age women in a KPMG study, and they expressed their desire to become senior leaders, but only 40% were actually able to consistently envision themselves as leaders.
Because of...
because we're taught, remember, 86% of the women said that they're taught to be nice to others, growing up in school, doing well in school, but less than 50% of them are actually taught leadership lessons.
Right, so we're sort of socialized that way.
That's right.
And I think it's interesting what you mentioned, too, about your client when you asked her about telling more about herself and what she's up to. And she mentioned that she was dinged on that, I'm paraphrasing, dinged on that on an assessment at work. So I think for a lot of women, too, sometimes we try it. It doesn't go as well as we planned, or we get feedback that we're bragging or something. That just sticks with us.
Yes. Well, I would say that there's ways to do it. So, for example, I think what was happening for her is that she was going into environments and meetings where her tone was really harsh. She wasn't reading the room. She wasn't adjusting her style. So for her to get visibility for herself was more challenging because it wasn't a friendly environment for her to do it anyway. So now if she's going and building relationships and allowing other people to see her in a different light, for her to share her humanity with other people, for them to do that with her. The old adage, it's hard to hate people that you like, that you know their story. And so once that she started to do that, everything started to change. Getting visibility for yourself, I think people misconstrue that. I'm not saying take a photo of yourself and stick it on a billboard in someplace, in the middle of New York City and say, I'm fabulous. But the only thing that you can ever guarantee, this goes back to the dignity zone too, the only thing you can ever guarantee is your degree of effort and your degree of advocacy for yourself. That's the only thing you can ever control. What happens oftentimes, once again, it goes back to the other point I made about it's a mindset game, is that we might try and it doesn't work. We may try again and it doesn't work. So rather than finding a different way in or saying, maybe that's not my battle to fight, or getting other mentoring and coaching, we give up. Mm-hmm. That's when it really says, no. There could be that it could be that it's not your time. So this woman's been trying to get promoted. This woman's been trying to get promoted for a long time. But I said to her boss said to me, I'm not promoting someone, and he loves her. But he's like, I can't promote her if people feel like they can't work with her because she's being too harsh with people.
And that's the thing
very,
too,
very difficult.
Not even the work. It's about, as you said, the way she's interacting or engaging with people.
That's right.
Do you find sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, do you find that some of your clients, especially as women, think that they have to be that way in order to appear strong? Not that they're thinking I need to be mean, but I think sometimes even friends I know who are in leadership positions or executive positions, they think they have to appear a certain way as far as strong or cold or not emotional at all, and not like you said, sort of hiding their humanity in order to move ahead, as opposed to what you advise so wisely of, no, showing it in this way. There's a way to do it.
Well, I think it's simple math. The data shows it. How many women are in senior executive positions in companies today? So the role modeling is different. Women aren't shown. Women sometimes, not always, because it's really changing now that more women are in the workforce and more women are not in the workforce. More women are ascending to senior level positions. That you're having role modeling. Because you have to remember, role modeling, where are we getting our role modeling from? We're getting our role modeling from men. Mm-hmm. And that's not a problem. It's not a problem at all. It's not a problem. Women, though, sometimes want to be able to know, how do I be a feminine woman in all these different circumstances? And because if I'm leaning in and being tougher or more aggressive, it's still feminine. And it's still being a woman. And I'm still not sacrificing that. So part of it is role modeling. Part of it is we haven't had enough role models within companies to show us something different. Then also, women sometimes are not great role models. They could be nasty. We could be nasty. We could be mean to each other. And so there's that. How do women become more advocates of each other to lift each other up? So one is the role modeling. Secondly, if you don't have the role modeling where you work, how do you go out and get a mentor so that you can have the role modeling? Because it's not an excuse to say, I work with a lot of men. I have a client who said to me, I work with a lot of men, and sometimes I get really stymied that I feel like I'm in an all-boys club. And we're talking about, okay, well, how now do you get women mentors so that it helps give you a different perspective? It helps break you out. It gives you a different world to look at, a different lens. So I do think it's the combination of all those things.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of the reasons that you're speaking to, one of the reasons I really wanted to start this podcast and sharing the stories, especially of women in different leadership positions, because we just need to hear it and hear the full journey, not just, oh, this is so-and-so, she's a CEO of such and such. It's what was she like when she was younger, and what is she like as a person, and then what is her advice and her experiences. So in my way, that's a way of providing role models or examples for other women.
Yeah. We need more of it. We can't have enough of it. Let's put it that way.
Exactly. Now, most of your clients, are they individual clients or corporations or a combination?
Most of my clients are companies. So, for example, Netflix, Warner Brothers, Sony, ESPN, Crown Media, all these large-scale entertainment companies. Those are most of my clients. Turner Broadcasting, Nickelodeon, NBC Universal, DreamWorks Animation, Discovery.
So small companies.
Right.
I love it. And they bring you in specifically to talk about, I'm sure you cater it for each one, but leadership especially.
Yes. And I would really say that now it becomes more about how do we create more of this safe and dignified workplace. So there's a lot that we talk about around that as well. So it's both.
How many people are in your company at this point? What does your support network look like?
Well, there's two things. One, when I created my company, I did not originally intend on I wanted it to be very virtual. So, and I wanted to be able to scale up and scale down as almost have an accordion model as necessary. So that's what I've had right now. I've had this model of I've got folks that are trained and developed in the Mindlight Group methodology, and so we can deploy and be as stealth as possible. So for example, we've got a program that we're doing for creative leaders. We've got a 12-month leadership program that we do, and we have 6 people who are staffed on that program. We've got executive coaches, we've got administrative support, we've got facilitators, and so there's lots of different arms and legs depending on what's needed.
And I would imagine where it's needed too, because you're not just doing this in New York; it's all over the country.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes people are fine with, they'll say, lots of times people say, we just want to fly you out here. So we're definitely doing a lot of traveling. Let's put it that way.
Excellent. Let's take a quick break for a special offer from one of our partners. Do you spend a significant amount of time creating incredibly smart, valuable, and dope content for your audience, only to feel like 1 or 2 people see your work when you promote it on social media? Did you know only 5 to 10% of your followers see anything that you post? That is why I love the social media management tool, Meet Edgar. And I had a chance to chat with CEO and co-founder Laura Roeder, yes, a woman, about how Meet Edgar makes sure your work has a better chance of reaching your customer.
What he does that's really different from other tools is repurposes your content so that you can get out of that cycle of creating 5 new updates a day, every day for the rest of time, which is how a lot of small businesses are handling social media, and it's driving them insane because who has time for that? So right. What Edgar does is stores everything in a library and then automatically repurposes and recycles your content for you. And the reason that's a really smart idea is because 5 to 10% of your followers see any status update that you post. So why would you spend all this time coming up with content to post it once or even post it twice when such a tiny percentage of the people who follow you and want to hear from you are going to see it? So the results we see for people, you just get a lot more traffic, you get a lot more exposure, and it saves you a lot of time because once you've built up your library, Edgar's sending everything out for you. You can just go in and chat with people and do kind of the fun stuff on social.
I'm telling you, Meet Edgar has saved me a lot of time in my own business and increased my social media engagement and, more importantly, traffic to my website. Want to give it a try? Go to ElayneFluker.com/Meet Edgar to sign up now and use the promo code SEXY, SEXY, to get 1 month free plus $5 off your second month. That's ElayneFluker.com/Meet Edgar, MEETEDGAR, 1 month free plus $5 off your second month. And now back to the show. So Esther, what would you say entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
I would say, oh man, that's a really, really great question. I really think that it's taught me that I have a responsibility to give back. I have a responsibility to be a powerful role model for others because I am a woman. Being feminine is a gift. Being a woman is a gift. It's a gift to honor men and what they do and what they bring. If I don't do it, it's a disservice to myself and them. I would also say that entrepreneurship has taught me that I am much more than my perceptions, that I can stretch beyond what I perceive my abilities to be. So for me, it's really important to have a very good support system that surrounds my organization. So for example, we've got coaches who coach me. So I've got business coaches and marketing coaches and sales coaches and spiritual coaches, because I think that it's really important to know that it does take a village to grow. And also my model of way of operating may just be one slice of the way of looking at everything because I'm living and breathing it every day. And you need an outsider's perspective to teach you. But I think that one of the biggest things that entrepreneurship has taught me is how to be a better person, how to be a better human being, how to be, like what I said to you before, how to be more dignified for myself. And as a result, then I can do that. I can bring that more to clients because I can't stand in front of clients and say, how do you bring dignity and power in the workplace? And I'm not working on myself.
Right.
I'm phoning it in for me. I can't possibly do that. That would be a travesty to everybody.
They say entrepreneurship is one of the best journeys in personal development that you'll ever go through. You will learn about yourself as an entrepreneur.
Well, it is because the business is a direct reflection of you.
Mm-hmm.
So what you do, it's a direct reflection of who you are and where you are in the life cycle of your business. That's exactly it, full stop. So when you look at your business and you go, it's not thriving, or I'm stuck, or whatever it might be, you first have to look in the mirror and say, what is it about me that needs to shift in order to have the possibility for everything else to shift? What in my mindset? What do I need to shift in the way that I'm being or the way that I'm approaching things? That if I did that would really escalate and shift everything else.
Mm-hmm. So in closing, Esther, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
And now you're going to make me cry. So the first person that came to my mind when you said it, well, actually two people came to mind, but you said one, so I can't cheat. Well, the reason why I'm going to say this one is because it's from when I've been little, my mom. I would say that my mom always said to me, I know you, kid, you can do it. I trust you. You can do it. She always said it to me, no matter what. I doubted myself. I called my mom. She's like, I know, but I know you can. I know you can do it. And my mom was a petite, feisty New Yorker, and she would just say, I know you can. I know you can do it. I know you can do it. I know it doesn't look like it now, but I know you can do it. So I owe my mom the deepest of gratitude. She gave birth to me. Of course, I owe her a lot just for that. My mom once said to me that you have to earn your title of mother or sister or father or husband or brother. And I would really say my mom has earned her title as mom time and time and time and time again by being a tireless advocate for me and my possibilities.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh, thank you. You got me all misty-eyed now.
So tell us now how we can support you. Tell everyone your website, social media, how to get in touch with you, and I'll make sure that I link to everything, but I want people to hear it.
That's great. So my website is mindlightgroup.com. So mindlightgroup.com. You can also see me on Twitter at Esther Weinberg. Those are probably the easiest ways. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. So all those are great places to find me. Message me, email me. I'm happy to have a conversation and get back in touch.
Excellent. Esther, thank you so much. This was so great, my fellow New Yorker.
Thank you so much, dear. This was terrific. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now, before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
What I would say is I think it's what I said before, our culture, our society, our workplaces are screaming, and I think we are too, for this increased level of dignity and for people to feel powerful, not because of title or gender, to be powerful because of what they declare that's important to them and others. And power can be easily given by allowing people to do their best and to be their best and to thrive.
And I have to tell you now, after talking to you for this past hour, I'm just excited to know that you are one of the people who are working on that, helping us shift in that way to work on creating dignity zones, as you said.
Oh, thank you so much. It takes a village. So I'm glad that you're on board with it.
Excellent. All right. Hold on just a second. All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Esther. To find out more about her, to find out about Mindlight Group, and to get in touch with her, make sure you go to supportissexypodcast.com, go to the search icon at the top, and just search Esther, Esther. Her show notes page will pop up with links, tons of resources, and all the ways to follow her and get in touch with her. Now, if you've been listening to the podcast from the beginning or this is your first time, know that I appreciate you being here. What I would love for you to do is to subscribe so that you don't miss a thing. I've interviewed more than 200 women on the podcast at this point. I'm so excited about it. Every day it's just a joy to do it, a joy to bring it to you, a joy to connect with these women and share their stories. But I don't want you to miss anything. So please make sure you subscribe. You'll always have a new episode. 5 days a week, we'll be there for you. All right, so thank you for being here. Make sure you subscribe. As I always say, it would not be the same without you. Again, I truly appreciate you. And now, until next time, you know what to do. Go out there and create something sexy, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.